3 weeks before the eruption, scientists drafted an Alert Level 3 warning for Wakari Volcano. It was never released. Tour operators kept selling tickets. On December 9, 2019, 47 people were inside that crater when it exploded. 22 never came home. Professor Ray Cas called it a disaster waiting to happen for many years. The warnings were there, so why did no one stop the tours? Wakari had long been recognized as one of New Zealand's most hazardous volcanoes. From 2015, GNS Science tracked steady sulfur dioxide emissions, climbing to 800 tons per day. Their reports warned that persistent gas release did not rule out sudden, violent eruptions. By mid-2016, Professor Ray Cas of Monash University described the volcano's hydrothermal system as inherently unstable, warning that even minor tremors could trigger explosive activity. That June, a nighttime eruption scattered ash across the crater. No tourists were present, but the event underscored the risk. Cas later called Wakari a disaster waiting to happen for many years. Despite these warnings, tourism surged. By 2018, over 10,000 people visited the island annually. Tour operators promoted the adventure as safe, relying on standard protocols and basic protective gear. Seismic summaries from 2017 and 2018 noted an uptick in low-frequency volcanic earthquakes, but official advice stopped short of recommending new restrictions. In April 2018, advisories sent to cruise line partners stated that guided visits could continue if existing safety measures were followed. Scientists saw a pattern: rising gas emissions, increased seismicity, and no reliable way to predict an eruption. The baseline risk remained high, but public safety messaging lagged behind scientific caution. By late 2018, the gap between what volcanologists knew and what tourists were told had widened, setting the stage for the events to come. By October 2019, Wakari's seismic readings and sulfur dioxide emissions had reached their highest levels since the 2016 eruption. GNS Science's real-time tremor charts showed a sustained increase, with daily bulletins warning of continuous tremor of this magnitude has preceded past phreatic eruptions. On November 18, the official volcanic alert level was raised from level 1 to level 2. The public bulletin stated, "Increased likelihood of a small eruption. Tours may continue, but operators should be prepared to suspend activities at short notice." Inside GNS Science, discussions grew urgent. Internal memos circulated between volcanologists and the Department of Conservation, debating whether to suspend all commercial landings. A draft alert bulletin prepared on November 18 and again on December 9 recommended halting tours until a full risk assessment could be completed. Senior officials, however, withheld the draft, judging its language as too precautionary and deciding to wait for more data. The Level 2 status remained public, but the strongest warning never reached operators or tourists. Professor Stephen Sparks, a leading volcanologist, later testified that a 5% probability of an eruption while tourists were present represented a very high societal risk. Yet tours continued, and the only actionable advice to operators was to be ready to evacuate. Scientists visiting the island wore full-face respirators, heat-shielded coveralls, and gas monitors. Tourists, meanwhile, received only basic helmets and disposable masks. The gap between scientific caution and commercial practice had never been wider. The days ticked down to December 9, with the island's unrest growing more obvious. but the chance to close Wakari to visitors quietly slipped away. On the morning of December 9th, 2019, White Island Tours prepared for a lucrative day. The cruise liner Ovation of the Seas had docked in Tauranga, delivering a fresh wave of passengers eager for a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. 38 cruise guests, along with several independent travelers, filled the manifest. 47 people in all would set foot on Wakari that day. For the operators, this was peak business. Each full helicopter brought in a 50,000 New Zealand dollars commission from in-flight charters, a figure confirmed in court records and tied directly to passenger numbers. The company's daily revenue model depended on maximizing seats, especially when major cruise ships were in port. Behind the scenes, contracts between White Island Tours, in-flight charters, and Royal Caribbean's local liaison outlined volume-based discounts and commission structures. These agreements incentivized operators to fill every available spot, regardless of recent scientific warnings or the island's raised volcanic alert level. The cruise itinerary dictated the schedule, and the tour operator's profit depended on keeping it. On paper, safety protocols were in place, but the operational calculus favored business as usual. Management signed off on the day's excursions, knowing the volcano was officially in a heightened state of unrest. The only advice from authorities was to be ready to evacuate. No additional restrictions were imposed, and no tours were suspended. The decision to continue was not made in ignorance. It was a calculated choice, balancing risk against guaranteed commission and the expectations of international partners. That morning, the machinery of commercial tourism moved forward, fully aware of the warnings and fully invested in delivering the promised experience. At 2:11 p.m. on December 9th, 2019, Wakari's crater floor split open. A dense column of ash, steam, and toxic gas erupted with no warning, sweeping over the 47 people on the island. The blast lasted less than 2 minutes. Superheated gases and rock fragments tore across the crater at speeds over 100 kilometers per hour. The temperature at the eruption's core surged above 300 degrees Celsius, enough to strip clothing, melt plastic, and inflict catastrophic burns in seconds. Tour guides and visitors were trapped on exposed ground, many within a few hundred meters of the vent. Those closest had no chance. 22 people died, including entire families and 2 guides. 25 more suffered burns covering most of their bodies. Survivors described the air turning black, visibility dropping to 0, and searing pain as their protective masks and gloves offered little defense. The difference in safety gear was stark. Scientists, when present, had worn heat-resistant suits and full-face respirators. Tourists that day wore hard hats and disposable masks, equipment designed for minor hazards, not a volcanic explosion. Within minutes, the island was transformed from a tourist attraction into a disaster zone. The eruption was over almost as quickly as it began, but the toll was immediate and irreversible. The eruption left families and communities shattered. Among the dead were the Hollander brothers Berend and Matthew, just 16 and 13 years old, who had traveled from Sydney with their parents. The Langford family from Australia lost Anthony, Christine, and their daughter Winona, whose body was never recovered. Pratap Singh died in hospital days after the blast. His wife Mayuri survived with burns over 70% of her body. Tour guide Hayden Marshall Inman a Ouachitain local known for his dedication to visitor safety, was killed while leading a group at the crater. His body was never found. Fellow guide Tipane Mangji had started work only a month before. The Singh family, the Hollanders, and the Langfords became faces of the tragedy, lives cut short on what was meant to be a day of adventure. Survivors carry scars that go beyond physical wounds. Jesse Langford, who lost his parents and sister, later told the court, "I feel like a victim of negligence." Mia Thompson, another survivor, described the moment the sky went black and the searing pain that followed. Families have spoken in courtrooms and public forums, demanding answers and accountability from those who made the decision to keep tours running. Their grief is a constant reminder that these deaths were not simply the result of natural forces, but of choices made in boardrooms and offices. The loss is permanent, but the demand for responsibility endures. In the Auckland High Court, the legal reckoning for Wakari's eruption reached its conclusion. WorkSafe New Zealand prosecuted 13 parties for health and safety failures, including Wakari Management Limited, White Island Tours, Volcanic Air Safaris, Arius, and Kahu, NZ. 5 companies were found guilty of reckless disregard for safety. Judge Evangelos Thomas described the use of an active volcano for profit as a systemic failure, assigning the largest penalty, $978,000 New Zealand dollars, to Wakari Management Limited. White Island Tours faced $483,900 New Zealand dollars fine and was ordered to pay $4.68 million New Zealand dollars in reparations to victims' families. The combined penalties for the helicopter operators totaled over $1.1 million New Zealand dollars. Christy McDonald KC, leading the prosecution for WorkSafe, stated in court, "No responsible operator would have allowed tourists onto Wakari that day." She pointed to internal documents showing commercial contracts and volume-based commissions, arguing these created a powerful incentive to keep tours running despite clear warnings. The court's findings made it plain. Profit was prioritized over safety, and the risk to life was ignored. The verdict confirmed that these deaths were not an unforeseeable accident, but the result of choices made by companies who had been warned again and again. Legal accountability was established, but the broader question of how the system allowed this to happen remained unresolved. In the aftermath of Wakari's eruption, the official investigations uncovered not just individual failings, but a system that had been unprepared to protect lives, even as the threat became undeniable. The 2019 disaster exposed a regulatory framework riddled with gaps. No law required commercial tours to halt at volcanic alert level 2, and no agency held clear authority to impose an exclusion zone without consent from the island's private owners. Internal reviews by WorkSafe and the National Emergency Management Agency revealed that warnings from GNS science, backed by rising seismicity, gas emissions, and explicit statements about heightened risk, were not translated into mandatory action. Communication between scientific monitors, regulators, and operators broke down at the most critical moment. The draft alert bulletin prepared on the morning of December 9th, which would have suspended all tours, was never released. Instead, responsibility was diffused across agencies, with each waiting for another to act. In response, New Zealand's Parliament amended the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Act in 2020, making it illegal to operate commercial tours on any volcano at alert level 2 or higher unless granted a ministerial exemption. This new law established automatic exclusion zones and required real-time risk data sharing between scientists, regulators, and operators. WorkSafe also introduced compulsory licensing for volcanic tourism, demanding robust emergency plans and independent safety audits. These reforms came too late for the families of the Hollanders, Langfords, Singhs, and the guides lost that day. The changes stand as an admission. The tragedy was preventable, and the system failed to act on clear warnings when it mattered most. Today, commercial tours still operate on active volcanoes worldwide, often with less protection than scientists use. As legal findings weigh accountability, Professor Ray Cas's warning echoes. Wakari was a disaster waiting to happen for many years. The cost of ignoring very high societal risk is always paid in human lives.